Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 356 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here and excited to welcome back a previous guest. This guest was someone who was on the Running for Real team. She worked with us for a few years, and now she has stepped off to do things on for her own consulting business, which I love. And I'm all about supporting friends in their journeys, whatever that may be, even if, yes, in my case, I lost out by losing her on the team. So I'm excited to bring back Maria Vargas, who is a dear friend of mine. And today we had a real purpose with this episode. I wanted this episode, well, actually Maria suggested it, I shouldn't say I. We wanted this episode to be a way of hearing about getting outside your comfort zone, about doing things that initially bring that feeling in you of like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And maybe you see myself or even Maria doing things like this and you think, how did these opportunities come about? A lot of it comes from taking those leaps of faith when you feel uncomfortable. Like that time I jumped in a drum circle with my friend Elizabeth. There was that voice that said, no, don't do that. And I ignored it for a second, took that leap, and it was so much fun. All kinds of examples of that you will hear today. But I wanted to bring Maria on for this reason to kind of talk through the yeah buts that might come into your mind and also talk about the importance of who we surround ourselves with. So this is a really purposeful episode. I think it's a powerful episode, and Maria has the best stories of what she has done in her life and how things have come about from very simple situations, which you're going to hear about today. So without any further ado, let's go. Welcome back, Maria Vargas. Hi friends, if you follow me on social media, you would have seen that I recently recorded the audiobook for Becoming a Sustainable Runner. It was a whole weekend, 16 hours of recording that I did, but I'm really excited that Becoming a Sustainable Runner is going to be on Audible for those of you who are audio listeners. But for those of you who are hardcover physical copies, that's me, book readers, this is the time to order. Pre-order, that is the best thing you can do to support me and to support Zoe at this time. Becoming a Sustainable Runner is a practical guide for runners of all abilities and backgrounds. And if you want to take meaningful action to protect our planet through your love of the sport, we're going to bring together personal stories, research, expert input. We're going to show you how you as an individual runner can better support your endurance journey and how you can extend those lessons into meaningful environmental action. We made this book approachable. It's got training tips and takeaway for beginner runners, for elite runners. We're going to show you how to use your own practice in a sustainable way, and it's going to serve as a useful guide for those of you wanting to take meaningful and effective action on climate justice. It's going to not only show you how to do things, but why. And if you go to becomingasustablerunner.com, there are links to all your favorite places to go get a copy of the book. Target, Amazon, and that's Amazon worldwide, Barnes & Noble, Bookshop, Waterstones, and Human Kinetics. And when you are there, you will see many of the quotes or testimonials, including one from Malcolm Gladwell, Reshma Saujani, Simranjit Singh, and many more. But while you are there, if you put in your name and email, you can also get our Beyond Running Sustainability tips that's going to give you 50 ways you can be a more sustainable runner in terms of individually, as a community, and planetary. So go to becomingasustablerunner.com. That's becomingasustablerunner.com to check out more. Maria, my dear friend, welcome back to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here, to be back, Tina. Thank you for having me.
No, this is actually your third time because last time you were here, you helped me. We co-hosted a podcast episode with Chase Jarvis. And at the time, he was like someone you just absolutely, I don't know, is idolized the right word? Or just, you just loved everything about him. And not that you don't now, I have no idea actually. But like, your life has changed so much since that moment. I would love to hear when you think about that now. That was probably like a highlight life moment, I would imagine. And correct me if I'm wrong. But now you've had so much change since then. I'd just love to reflect on that for a minute.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that was an example of whenever you put something out into the universe and the universe kind of conspires to helping you achieve it. I think that's an example of that happening. He was a person that I've looked up to in terms of creativity and thought process around creating and designing the life that you want. And then when we recorded that episode, it was sort of full circle of things coming together. So in a way, this podcast that we're doing today is a full circle because it's just a result of all of our years of friendship and also growth that we've both experienced since that last episode. So I'm really excited to dig into how we both have grown since then.
It's crazy. So for the listeners, Maria and I, we stay in touch. We talk a lot. We quite often one of us will be like, hey, so the craziest thing just happened. And then the other one will be like, oh my God, well, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you. But guess what? This just happened to me today. And it like feels a lot of the times like you and I are like traveling down this path separately, but things just seem to kind of explode on the same days, often in a good way. And it continues to amaze me that it feels like every time I want to update you on something exciting that's happened, you have something equally, or if not more, exciting to share with me that has happened, just happened to land in your lap, essentially. So
yeah, it's crazy. Like we can go a few weeks without talking. And then when we talk, we're like totally in sync with random that aren't random things, but very exciting things that we both end up like going through or something.
Mm-hmm. So for people listening who are like, okay, all right, so the world just like unfolds itself perfectly for you two, like everything just goes your way. Things are just like, you're just some of those lucky people that just things happen for. What would you like to say before we go any further forward?
You know, that's interesting. I think a lot of people, and maybe you get this too, they often say something like, oh, you know, these great things happen to you, or, you know, it's kind of like things kind of go your way. But I would say it's more of you putting yourself in life. I think it's an interesting yin yang balance between what you do, like within your autonomy to create things, or, you know, push through certain goals, or I love the phrase, it's your world. And we might have talked about this before, right? It's like a lot of things in life are out of our control. So it's really great when they are in our control. And so it's a balance of that and also allowing things to unfold as they're going to unfold and not resisting the change. So I think a lot of it is mindset, and mindset leads to action. And I think both of us have experienced things where, whether it's choosing to jump into a really cold lake, or, you know, doing something of the sorts. And it's like, the more you do things, the more the universe will start kind of moving things your direction.
Okay. I think you should share in a minute the example of where you are right now that is a perfect example of this. But first, for people who heard that and thought, okay, it was getting woo-woo, you know, these two are talking about universe conspiring, and things just don't work for me that way. Or maybe you know this, my dad is incredibly pessimistic. So I have had to fight my whole life to like overcome those negative thoughts that like that's the way he views the world. He calls it like being practical, but like for me it's pessimism. And so for someone who maybe struggles with it because they've been raised that way, or like things have been tough lately and they are thinking, how can I feel like the world is conspiring to help me when I feel like it's conspiring against me? Yeah. Any more thoughts on that for someone who just here's someone like you or I saying things like that, and it just can't quite stick.
Yeah. I think we can almost view it how we view running, right? Even like this is still a running podcast, and running in a way is a practice for us. And this mindset, I guess, that you and I are sort of developing is also a practice. It's something you do every day. And we don't have to go on big trips. Right now I'm in Paris for 3 weeks, a story I'll get to later about a stranger who essentially helped me get an apartment here. But we don't have to go on big trips to get the spirit of adventure or meeting people and being fulfilled. It's like you can intentionally talk with people in line, at the grocery store, at a coffee shop. Last year, I asked my Uber driver on the spot to go paragliding, and she said yes. And that led to a huge experience. And a lot of times it's just about kindness, like giving people a few minutes, and you never know who you're going to meet. And then suddenly you're a person who talks to strangers and has spontaneous experiences. And maybe to the bystander, it might appear like things just happen to you, but you know that deep inside it's a habit. It's like a practice and a mindset and a philosophy. And so it might seem that things just appear for you, but I mean, you and I have been slowly making these steps for the past 3 years since we've known each other. And the more we do them, it appears the more results we get.
Give the example of right now. Okay, even take out the fact that you are in Paris, because we'll get to the reason of why you're in Paris, why you are traveling this summer, but how you ended up in the apartment that you are at now, I think is a very good example of it not being, you happen to walk down the street and spill your coffee over the CEO of T-Mobile who happened, it's not like the movie version, but
yeah.
How did you get to this apartment where you're sitting in right now?
Sure. So originally I came to Europe very last minute for filming a video for the YouTube channel Yes Theory. So we can get to that a little bit later. But my plan there was we were going to Germany to film this episode that's going to be incredible. And I can't wait for you to see it. And after that, I told myself I would take maybe 2 or 3 weeks to, just see Europe. I've never really spent that much time here. And then one day I was in Paris and I was just staying here for 3 days. And I went to a coffee shop to work because I'm here, but I'm working remotely. And I just start talking with the barista. He saw that I had my camera with me and asked me if I did photography or videos and why I was in Paris. And whatever reason, I don't even know why, I decided to ask him if he knew of anybody who was renting an apartment. And here I was like, only 3 days in Paris. And for some reason, I was asking him if I could rent an apartment. And he said, I don't know of anyone off the top of my head, but if you want to exchange numbers, I'm happy to just ask around. And so we did. We exchanged WhatsApp numbers. And maybe 2 or 3 hours later, he replies and he says, my friend is actually leaving for the summer and she has this beautiful apartment with a view of the Eiffel Tower. And she's leaving for the summer and she is willing to talk with you and see if you can rent her apartment. And so I got in touch with her. We made an agreement and I spent a week in Switzerland, came back to Paris, and now I'm here in her apartment for the next 3 weeks.
Crazy and so cool. Yeah, I mean, that's such a good example. And I think when you sent me that in voice memo, or maybe you put it on your story, I can't remember, you were like, this is why you should, I think you put it on your Instagram story. You were like, this is why you should talk to strangers. And it's something like, that is such a good example, like a coffee shop barista. Like that is a simple interaction. Even if someone isn't used to like seeing the world in this way, you can always increase your interaction from more than, what would you like this? What is your name? Tina. Okay, thank you. Here's my payment. Thanks, bye. You can take it up like even to one more level.
And we're not like, I wasn't looking to get anything out of the interaction, right? It's like, we just have to go in with the mindset, like not even asking, just being open to it. It's like the door that's just there. And if you take a little step forward, maybe you would just end up being friends. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but it's the more you practice this stuff, then it starts to develop.
And actually, I have a good example of that. When I was flying back from running as a guide once, I was coming from Salt Lake, maybe, to St. Louis. And I sat down in my seat and I got my journal out. And I think I've told you this. And then I sit next to me is this guy, and we're not really, it's just someone sitting next to me. And I pull my journal out, and then he pulls a journal out and he starts writing. And I was like, wow, I've never seen anyone else on a plane writing in the journal. So eventually I can't remember who started it, but we started talking about journaling. And it turned out he is this, he runs this mental health nonprofit for Black men who have been through trauma and are looking to heal. And he does all this amazing stuff. And he was just like the most interesting person. We talked the entire flight for like 3 hours. And we exchange numbers and we check in from time to time. Never gone anywhere, never like done anything. We haven't met up. We haven't given each other any opportunities, but it just was like this incredible moment of connecting with another human off that one thing of noticing we were both journaling. And it just, even now, is such a special thing. And when we check in, it's a very like, just heartwarming feeling. And that was simply from taking that moment. And I know I want to add with flights, sometimes with flights, I am not in the mood to talk to people. And sometimes you just want to sit on your plane and get work done. And someone's trying to talk to you and you're like, just please leave me alone. Like I get that. And I just want to add that because I know I feel that way sometimes. And that's an example, but it doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be anywhere. You feel that energy from someone when they want to talk to you and you want to talk to them.
Exactly. I think it's all about the energy. And I think sometimes when we talk with people, they're skeptical about talking with strangers, right? Because it's what your parents told you when you were a kid, don't talk to strangers. But I think that's where listening to your gut and your intuition really comes in. And with the person who's renting me the apartment, I talked with her for over 2 hours yesterday about how do we identify this feeling in our gut where your mind maybe says one thing and your gut says another thing. And for her, it was a weird situation letting a stranger, me, live in her apartment with all of her things, etc.
So she hasn't done this before?
No, it was her first time. Yeah.
Wow.
And so she had to put a lot of trust in me, but she said, I did a gut check and something told me that you were the one, that you were, trustworthy and responsible, etc. So I think a lot of times we have to do this gut check. It's not about just going around the city. Like, you have to have some sort of gut check with yourself when it comes to strangers. But I think for the most part, you just develop this radar sense. The more you do it, the more you talk with strangers. And talking with someone at a coffee shop is not going to, do huge harm. Like you can sort of tell. And something that you said about the plane reminded me of another idea is we don't have to just talk with strangers. We could do like acts of kindness. And so when I was coming to Germany from the States, someone from the Yesu team gave me the idea to buy a box of chocolates at the airport and give it to the flight attendant crew on our way into the plane. And so I was with another person from who was going on this adventure, and we got to the airport. We went to the store, we bought a box of chocolates, and when we got into the plane, we gave them to the flight attendant and we said, hey, this is for the crew. We just wanted to say thank you. And we wrote our names and our seat number on the box of chocolates. And then they were so happy. They were all smiling, and we got to our seats, blah, blah, blah. Maybe halfway into our flight, the flight attendant comes to our seat and gives us a little gift box, a travel gift box with toiletries and socks and headphones and toothpaste as a thank you to us. And, the thing is, it's like not the result that matters. It's the effort that you put into the interaction. And so that was just something that we could do. Like maybe next time you're on a plane, like try and give them chocolates or something and see what happens. But it's just about kindness.
Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I am excited to say that I have now taken my Tracksmith items beyond what they had ever done before. I ran in them for my 50-mile ultra, and not only were they comfortable, I had no chafing, no even thoughts to my clothing. It didn't even cross my mind. I had my one chafing spot under my arm that I tend to get, but nothing to do with the clothes ever chafed in any of the 9 hours and 20 or 25 minutes I was out there. So now I am confident to say that Tracksmith clothing is wonderful for ultras. And you want to know what is even better? In this ultra, I wore a top, a tank, the Bell Lap tank shirt. And I had never worn it before, as in I had just taken it out of the package and not washed it. And I wore this Bell Lap top brand new, and I didn't have any problems with it. If that doesn't tell you everything, I don't know what is going to. So you, as a friend of mine, can get $15 off if you're a brand new customer, your order of $75 by using the code TINANEW by going to tracksmith.com/Tina. That's tracksmith.com/Tina. If you're a new customer, Tina New. If you are already in love with Tracksmith, which everyone is once you try it, I know it's really easy to look at it and be like, yeah, it can't be that good. It really is. And an ultra in a brand new top, a brand new tank should tell you that. This is a sports bra, so it could have easily gone wrong. So using code TINAGIVE, if you are a previous Tracksmith customer, will give a donation to Track Girls on your behalf and also give you free shipping. Again, you can go to tracksmith.com/Tina to go check that out. Some of my favorite items, I wore the Lane 5 tights, those are tight short, which is what I wore on the bottom half. As I said, I wore the Bell Lap top on the top half. And they were both just incredibly comfortable. Some of my other favorites are the Session Speed shorts for the summer. And I also like the Alston bra. So go check those out at tracksmith.com/Tina. You will not regret it. And you will find yourself in comfort, clothes that last for many, many years. And just going to be a decision that you will be very glad you went with. And it is also a sustainable decision because the quality remains the same. Go check it out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's such a good example of just like the smile and the whole world smiles with you kind of concept of things, in terms of you just want to, it's like you see those kindness pass it on. And I think I told you about this when I was in Chicago, working the marathon last year, how, I literally saw like a wave of these random acts of kindness like unfolding. Like it was literally like we were driving, Kat and I, the sustainability manager, were driving out of the marathon area to give food that we had recovered that we were going to give to a donation, food recovery place that would then donate the food to people in need. We were driving out. This man was running. He noticed we were driving out. He checked to see if there was traffic. He helped us get across. And then we saw he dropped something, and then someone picked it up and handed it to him. And then a few minutes later, I saw it was just like one thing after the next. That was like each person was like tapped with like a random act of kindness that then they gave to something else. It was really cool. But that's such a good example of just finding ways. Okay. So Maria, what do you think? Should we go into some of the adventures that you have been on, or that we have been on, in terms of like things that have unfolded when we were together? Or do you think I think actually this is maybe a good time to talk about the importance of having someone in your life who helps you to push you to make these choices, and the importance of having that person. I mean, I know for me, whenever I am, especially in a new place, but generally, I think of you quite often when I'm like, I should try something different. What would Maria be doing? Or like, you're in my head a lot. So I would love to talk about the importance of having someone in your life who does push you to seek new experiences, to maybe channel this part of you. For someone listening, how can they find that person or seek out who that person is within the people they already know?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and something that all of us should always think about. And both of us found each other in that way. And I've learned so much from you. You're constantly in my head. And, whenever we go through daily life and, for example, maybe there's a really cold lake, immediately we're both like, let's jump into it. But it's a result of practicing it, but also surrounding yourself with people. And a mentor recently told me that it's important to have the right environment for our growth. And we can have all the methods, there's different practices that we can do and methods that people talk about. But unless you have the right environment and the right surroundings to support your change, that includes the people that you're with, right? And so I don't know if you've heard the saying probably that you're the sum of the 5 people who you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I would say that it necessarily isn't who you physically spend time with, like you and I. We don't talk every single day, but we both are sort of on that same frequency level where, we both push ourselves and encourage each other's growth, and it rubs off on each other. So it is important to sort of have that, some people call it trust circle or whatever, these 5 people who can give you their honest opinions and who can encourage growth in different areas, right? So I guess almost acting as mentors in a way, or people who, like you, are looking to grow themselves personally. And I don't think we have to have them all at once, but it's about like identifying them as they come. And so, yeah, I'm curious, like for you, how did you, or like who, you said for me that I'm always in your head whenever it comes to doing spontaneous things, but I'm also curious about what other topics, or like how else do you view people as mentors?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing with me over the last, I would say, year or two has been that I think I always thought, like you said about these you've talked about these random interactions with people, and I have plenty of those, or people that I've known. I think in the past, I spent a lot of energy trying to keep everyone that I knew kind of in a close circle, not in a close circle because it obviously couldn't be, but I spent a lot of energy trying to like essentially hold on to those friendships, keeping them at the level they were when they were at their strongest. But now I'm recognizing the importance of having a few, as you said, a few people around you, 5 people around you who really help you with your goals, with your visions, but also are able to say, hey, this is not serving you, or I'm going to stand up here and say, I don't agree with that, even if you are absolutely set that this is the thing to do. And so I think for me, I've been trying to surround myself with those people who help me to grow and want me, like genuinely want me to succeed, but also are not afraid to say when they think something is not for your best interest. And I understand that is difficult at times to wrap your head around, especially like when you are at a point where maybe you do want to focus on growth and you do want to become a better person each and every day, but you haven't had those kinds of friendships. And it's scary, isn't it? Like if you have always been around people who are kind of either quite content or not prepared to work on themselves, and then all of a sudden you're saying, well, I think I want to grow, it can be scary to them, and they might want to like lock you down and be like, no, like don't change things, like we've got a good thing going on. And I want to speak to that. Yeah.
I think a challenge for a lot of us is the feeling of being lonely. And I know for me, I've experienced that a lot, where I'm kind of locked into this grander vision of things. And I feel that the people around me aren't necessarily wanting to push themselves to these like big ways, or maybe having big dreams. And for example, you're someone who I know understands that concept of like, we only got one life. We got to give this all we have. And you're not afraid to have these more maybe philosophical conversations, and also playing devil's advocate with each other, of course, that is included. But sometimes I personally feel that it's sort of a lonely road when a lot of the friendships that I have are maybe just kind of more social and superficial. And I feel like sometimes I miss that in my life, where maybe I only have like one or two people who really are acting as this like really supportive environment, like yourself included, my parents, and like maybe one other person. But sometimes I feel like my friendships are lacking that. So my question is, how do we, I don't know if it's attract more people who really want to grow and explore and dream really big. And also, just like, how do you find or attract those people without it being forceful,
Yeah. I mean, it is tricky. And I think going back to energies though, we've talked about this a lot, and this is how, I know you do too, but there's just some kind of like energy level that you feel from people when you connect with them. And it's just then putting in the effort to stay in touch with that. But like Simran is a very good example for me. Like Simran has a beautiful energy about him. I know, you have become friends with him through when we met, or when you met him in 2019. Was it 2021 when you came with me we were both in New York at the same time. And you came with me to meet him. He is such a good example of someone. At the time I recorded a podcast with him, and that could have been the end of it. And I think for most people that would be it. Like, let's say you have a work meeting with someone, you really like them a lot. But then that meeting is over and you're like, goodbye. But with Simran, I felt something. I like made an effort through email, and then we exchanged numbers, and then we met up, and then I kept, just checking in with him, being there for him, offering support. So even though in many ways Simran is like a mentor to me, he also, we're close enough now that we chat every few weeks. And so I think it's just when you feel that energy of someone following up, and that's the part, I know you're good at this, but that's the part where I think a lot of people lose it, is that they have a connection with someone, they feel something special about someone, but then the situation passes and they think, oh, well, that person's, what I was scheduled to do with them is over. So on to the next thing. But grabbing a hold of those.
Exactly. I think you're onto something, and it has to do with energy. And the metaphor that I've sort of think about when we talk about when you meet someone and it's like you instantly click, or that there's something there and you can't really put words to it. It's almost like every human has a radio frequency. And sometimes when we meet someone who's on a similar frequency channel than you just click. And so in my head, it's like, okay, we're not always going to be on the same frequency with everybody. But if, let's say, 70 or 80% of the time we're around people who are on similar frequencies, that's when I feel really fulfilled or happy. And I feel like there's more growth, because there's this mutual understanding that you can't really put words to, just like when you met Simran, or when I met Simran, or when we met. And then there's people who aren't going to be on similar frequencies, and that's okay too. But for me, maybe it's becoming a priority as we grow, to find more people who are on those similar frequency radio channels than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. And then, with that ties into you and I, like that trip to New York. We were working together at the time. We had some things planned. You came with me to meet a few people, him included. And then we had that day with Malcolm Gladwell. We got to go on a run with him, and Knox was there. But even that day in itself, I think maybe before I get to that, just because I think people find it funny, do you want to describe what I was like in the 2 hours before meeting Malcolm?
I remember the night before, we were in the hotel room, and you're like, Maria, what should we ask Malcolm? And you like pulled out your laptop or paper, I don't remember, and we were brainstorming questions. And then we had a bunch of questions, I think. And then at the end of it, you're like,
scratch this. Like, I'm probably not going to remember any of this. We're just going to go with the flow.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if when you recorded that episode, you like followed any of the questions or you went with your gut, but I think that's a good example. And then of course, like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, we're going to Malcolm's recording studio. But I thought it was really great how you sort of came to the conclusion on your own to just let it flow naturally. So I'm curious, like, what ended up happening, because I don't remember.
Well, do you remember firstly the conversation that we had right as we pulled up and I was asking Knox his opinion on something and he was like, just stop overthinking it about what I should do when I saw him?
Oh, when we were in the car?
Yeah. Do you remember what I was saying?
I don't remember what you said.
I was like, should I hug him? Do I shake his hand? Do I wave? Do you remember that? And Knox was like, just do what feels right. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know. This is Malcolm Gladwell. Like, what do I do? And then he answered the door, didn't he, with no shoes on?
With no shoes, yeah.
No shoes on, sweatpants, t-shirt, just like a normal person. You're like, oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, very surreal. And but no, I remember I had like some areas I wanted to go into, like the day before or the day after I think it was the day before we had that conversation with Mary Kane with Tracksmith at their Beacon pop-up. And I wanted to ask that question about Mary, the comments he had made about Mary. I knew I wanted to get that out. And I think I had a few other things, but generally I think I followed it and just trusted in it because, I was in this moment where I was like, this is something I have dreamed of. And I do remember like really trying so hard to just be in the present in this conversation with him, even though every now and again I would look at him and be like, that's Malcolm Gladwell. That right there, that person that's looking at you is Malcolm Gladwell. And being like, okay, give up, focus. He's just a man. He's a man talking to you. Please listen. But it was, trying to be in the present and follow the conversation. But from there, that led to something else. So that could have been a situation where, you and Knox went off wherever you went off and you came back. And I finished, and there was that moment where you were like, how did it go? And I was like, but also like not wanting to make a big deal in front of Malcolm. But then that wasn't the end of it, because we then took that opportunity to do something else, which was to go with him to his favorite running spot, go for a run. Myself get stung by a bee, which is such a good example of like life reminding you that like you can be in these incredible moments, but life is still life when you get stung by a bee in the eye. And do you remember how puffy my eye was for a few days?
I forgot about that.
It's like I'd been punched in the face. And then after that, we had another moment after the run. So you can share that bit.
Yeah, I remember I definitely fell behind you guys. Y'all went off running. And when we got back, I think it was Knox who said, why don't we jump in the river? And I think we bushwhacked our way down to the river after we said bye to Malcolm. And we just jumped in. And I remember just the three of us were sitting there kind of in silence. I don't really remember talking very much. Mm-hmm. We were just in the cool water looking at the trees, and it was summertime, so it was just a perfect day. And now every time I go into a river, I just remember that day. And that is an example of the phrase, like, it's your world, right? Like, we went on a run. We didn't go back in the car like we could have. We sought a little bit more adventure and jumped into the river because why not? And then we went on our way. So that's like one of those moments where it's an example of it doesn't cost anything extra to jump into a river. And it's a memory that I think all of us will remember.
Mm-hmm. I want you to share the other river story, which is a missed opportunity. But then wasn't. So share that one.
So last year I was in Chicago during Chicago Marathon time, and it was my first time seeing the Great Lakes. I was so excited. I was biking around and I was on an e-bike when suddenly this group of guys I saw and this was like cold because it was like chilly outside. And this group of guys who I passed by were about to jump in. And I talked to them for a second. I was like, oh, are you guys going to jump in? They were like, yeah, do you want to join us? And I just had jeans on and a shirt. And I was like, if I jump, then I'll be wet and I have to go back to the hotel. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, do I say yes or do I say no? And I was like, I'm going to pass. Like, I don't want to ride in my wet jeans all the way back to the hotel.
Which, let me pause you there. That is such a good example of like what we've been trained to think. Like, you know, okay, think about the consequences, not be in the present. Think about, okay, but then I have to be wet and cold on the way back. Like, this is a situation right here that people every day listening find ourselves in. So I just want to pause on that. So continue.
No, 100%. And it's all in our heads, right? There's no issue with biking back wet to the hotel. It would be fine. And who knows, maybe I would have met, 5 really cool people and jumped into the lake with strangers. And normally, like, me, I normally say yes to these things. So when I said no, I was so upset with myself. And I already had
And you sent me some voice memos. Do you remember? You were like, I just wish I...
I wish I'd said yes. Yeah. So I sent you those memos before I decided. So then I was frustrated with myself and I sent you those voice notes and I was like, Tina, I just said no. I should have said yes. And I'm here and I haven't jumped into the lake. And then I told myself, okay, I'm dropping this bike right now and I'm jumping in. So that's what I did. I was already far from the guys, but I went on my own and just jumped into the lake. And as I jumped in, I totally slipped and somehow I didn't break a leg or worse.
Or your back or your head.
I totally slipped, but I jumped in with my jeans and all, and I was very happy. The water was very cold. And then I jumped on the bike all wet and rode to the hotel and I lived.
Thank you to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. AG1 is the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day. It is the one ritual I'm able to keep. I wake up, I go downstairs, I drink my AG1 and I get on with my day. I gave AG1 a try because I was finding it hard to get all those nutritional pieces that I was being told to get in one place. I was trying to take care of my body. I was trying to take care of my health, but I didn't want to take 300 different supplements. And AG1 had 75 vitamins, minerals, whole food source ingredients all in one place. I drink AG1 first thing when I wake up in the morning. Before I do anything else, it is the first thing I do, and it makes me feel great. It is enough calories for me to run on if I want to go straight out the door, or also it's just giving my body a good jump start to the day. I really am loving it. And if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Tina. That's drinkag1.com/Tina. Check it out. You will not regret it. It is a wonderful product. I have been using it for many years now and absolutely loving it. I know with every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success, and you will too. Go to drinkag1.com/Tina. The reason we are drawing attention to the slipping is because Maria put her camera up to take a video of it. And it is literally a miracle that she didn't smack her head on the pavement, on the side of it, because like the angle that she went into the water was like practically horizontal, because she slipped sideways, like leg went under her and just fell in. And it's so funny. That video is hilarious, but also like so many things, terrifying of how that could have gone, but also just such a good example of just what we're talking about here, of like taking that leap, whatever that might be in that moment. And sometimes you say no, and we've all had that moment too, where you've said no to something and then you're like, I should have said yes. And I actually, Maria, find this quite a lot with my kids now. So there's this nature reserve, playscape is what it's called, at Forest Park near me. And it is this basically big area they've transformed into a child's play area, playscape. And it's got like different natural terrains, like logs for climbing, and a natural sand pit, and like a creek, and all these things. And my kids, one day I was taking them there, and they were like wading through the water. They'd like pulled up their pants to their knees so they could wade in the water. And then Bailey said, "Can I sit down?" And she was just wearing her clothes. And sitting down would have put it up to her chest. And everything in me wanted to say no, because I'm like, okay, but then the car seat's going to get dirty. They're going to be all wet. Their clothes are going to be muddy, and I'm going to have to wash them. And all these things kept coming through of like, but then I'm going to have to do this, and then this is going to be this. And then they're sitting in that gross water. And what if it gets in their hair? Which it did. And so, but I said, you know what? Yeah, sure. Like I was like, gotta stoke that curiosity in them. Like, do not squash that curiosity in them. And so both my girls then sat and proceeded to swim like up to their necks in this muddy, like you can't even see your hand that is just under the surface of the water, that muddy water. And they just played in it, and they had the best time. And it was such a good example of like everything in me was thinking about the like what ifs, but I just saw how much joy they had playing, and all the other parents were coming along and their kids wanted to do it. And I'd see them be like, "Oh no, honey, no." And I was kind of proud to be like the mother of the grubby kids who were like in the muddy water.
Yeah. And that's such a great example too. Also, another theme is a lot of this stuff we as adults stop being curious about or stop doing. And it's so important to keep fostering this like childlike self where everything is just full of wonder and curiosity. You know, who's to say an adult can't like swim in like gross water, or do something else? Like I think as we grow, tend to take the world a lot more seriously and end up missing out on those little adventures or little curiosities that you have when you're a kid. And so I'm not saying we all need to go jump into the mud, but we can go jump into the lake. Again, that same example of like, how do you foster that sense of curiosity? And when you're an adult, you make your own decisions, right? Like Bailey and Chloe wanted to jump in. And so, and you, in this sense, like gave them that chance to do it. But when we're adults, it's sort of up to us to make those decisions for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think for someone who has struggled with this in the past or currently, I find that I mentioned that like generally because my life, you know, with kids and my business and things is so, it's harder for me to do it at home. But when I'm away, that's when, like I said, you really come into my mind. That's when you and I often say when we're in the same place, like we will have we will have some adventure. We will have something crazy happen, which is where the Harry Styles, when we went to the Harry, had floor seats or whatever it's called, to see Harry Styles randomly 2 days before. Thank you, Liz, if you are listening. And that became, you and I were like, we're going to have some kind of adventure when we're both in Chicago. And that just, I think it's like, as you said earlier, like opening your mind. So maybe beginning when you next go on a trip, going into it that like, I'm going to have some adventure. I'm going to say yes to something. I don't know what it is going to be, but something during this time is going to come to me, or maybe a few things. I'm going to say yes to one of them. Do you think it is harder to do it when you're at home in your daily structure?
I think it goes back to the practice and doing this stuff day in and day out. Whenever, and maybe we talked about this before, but whenever we're on a big trip, our mind is more open to experiences, right? Because we're in a new place and a new city and new people and new surroundings and new food. So we're open to more things. But when we're home, we're in our routines, we're with the same people, we do the same things. So I think it's almost even more challenging to do this stuff at home. But something that has helped me is the YouTube channel Yes Theory. Some of their older videos is when they lived in LA and had very little budget to do anything. And they came up with the most random things to do in your city. And so by watching stuff like that, you can almost just encourage your brain to be more creative to doing these things. And I remember one time I was at a coffee shop in Austin and I was like, oh, I'm going to do the pay it forward coffee and start a chain and see what happens. And I was with a friend and we started the pay it forward. So we bought the coffee for the next person. They started the trend and it lasted for maybe 2 hours until somebody broke the chain. But I remember we sat at the coffee shop watching people do it and like smile that someone had paid for their coffee. And one person who came out of the coffee shop ended up talking with us because we asked them like, oh, did someone pay for your coffee? And she said yes. And her name was Maria. She was also from Colombia. She had spent the same amount of time living in Austin as I had. We studied the same thing and we became friends. Like a new friendship came out of paying it forward at a coffee shop in my town, right? Another day, there was a kite festival in Austin and a friend and I went around on bikes trying to recruit strangers to like come have a picnic with us at the kite festival. We talked to like, I don't know, 15 people and none of them said yes. So in that case, we weren't successful, but it was like the practice of going up to someone and saying, hi, do you want to go to a picnic with us? So I think there are things. And for you as a parent, when you have young kids, I think it could be difficult, but I think there are other ways we can make our everyday lives a little bit more out of the ordinary.
I know a lot of what you do is like having lots of unplanned, like you have a lot of buffer time. Like your Paris example is another good example of this, of where you said you were there for 3 days, but it wasn't like in 4 days you had this set thing that you had to do in this place. Like you leave a lot of dead space and kind of like leave the door open a lot of the time, and I really admire that about you. And yeah, like for me being a parent, it is hard to do a lot of that because of just the situation. But you probably remember this when I was in Maui, after having Boston being like this, I was like, when I get to Maui, I have nothing planned other than one trip to Haleakala. And do you remember I ended up meeting that man in the coffee shop and we talked for like 3 hours. And then he invited me to go surfing with him. He happened to own a surf shop and I went surfing for 3 hours and had just like one of the best moments of my life. It was that surfing experience. And then he also invited me to a chanting circle. Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
And that was all from just like not all because I didn't have much planned other than the race I was doing with Joe as a guide and then the Haleakala trip. The rest of it, I left it as like, let's see what happens time. And I think that is something that can be really hard to wrap your head around, especially like if you are someone who's like, okay, I'm on this trip, I want to make the most of it. I've always been that person who would look up like best things to do in Maui, Lahaina. But like not doing that, resisting the urge to do that allowed these beautiful things. And for me, surfing is one of the things I love most in this world. And I could have had, if I booked myself a 1 hour session, instead I got a 3 hour session with a private instructor who was the owner of the entire thing, like, and for free.
Yeah.
And so that, like, talk about that piece of like not over structuring yourself whenever possible.
No, that's a perfect example. I think sometimes it's our own brain's rigidity towards structure that we want to plan everything. And it is a balance. It's the yin yang, right? We have to have some sort of structure. We can't not, but we also have to just release ourselves a little bit from our own constraints that we place upon, what we do on a regular basis. And the same, like similar to your surf, but yours was a better example, is I was in Barcelona a couple of days ago at a park and I was on my way to the beach. My plan in my head was spending the day at the beach. And I walked through a park and suddenly this guy starts talking to me and he was explaining the history of Barcelona. And then he goes, you want a coffee? Like, let's go get coffee. And I was like, okay, sure. So we walked together to the coffee shop. He bought my coffee and my breakfast and we just talked for an hour. And then he went off to work and I went off to the beach. So it's like, sometimes it's just being a little bit more flexible with your plans. And then you can continue on with your day, or maybe you'll meet someone like you did who ends up like taking up your whole day and being, a really wonderful, longer experience. But it is I don't think there's such thing as coincidence. Like, there are no coincidences. It's only opportunities and like doors to be opened. And the people that you meet, if you're open to them, then that sort of like ends up taking a life of its own.
You just said about the coincidences. You and I have talked about this a lot. You reminded me to reread The Alchemist again recently.
Look what I have.
Oh, what is that version?
It's the like old version.
That's the old version.
Mine is the old version. I actually have it bookmarked. Obviously, if you're listening, you can't see this, but it says no coincidences.
And that is particularly relevant to you. Why? Please tell us about you said about Yes Theory, and encourage people to go watch some of those videos, especially if what we're saying today is resonating with you. But tell us about why that's relevant to you right now. From what you just did.
Coincidences?
Yeah, like why you were telling me about like the time you had read that and what happened that day or a few days later.
So I was reading The Alchemist, which is by Paulo Coelho, and you should just, everybody go read it. It's about life in terms of, I don't even know how to explain it. Following your intuition, really. Yeah. And
personal legend.
Yeah, and your personal legend. And I was reading it, and wait, is this when I'm?
Yeah, when you're oh, you're fine.
With the
Germany. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, anyways, I was reading The Alchemist, and I got an email from the Yes Theory. Or hold on, let me restart. Back in December, there was this event, or November, there was an event where Yes Theory was premiering this documentary called The Iceman Project. And The Iceman Project is a beautiful film that Yes Theory produced, where they sponsored an athlete named Anders Hoffman, who was the first person to ever do a full Ironman distance triathlon in Antarctica, which is insane. And the sort of theme behind it is that limitations are perceptions. And so everything that, we set our limits to is just in our mind. And the film was releasing in New York. And so I went to go to the red carpet premiere. And similar to you, when you met Malcolm, I was at the premiere and I was in line. I was like, wait, I'm about to meet Amar from Yes Theory and Anders, and I don't know what I'm going to say to them. And I was like the next person in line. And I was like, oh. And so it occurred to me to share them that they had inspired me in part to do this 10-mile swim a couple of years ago, where I did like a 10-mile open water swim. And that was around the time when I had heard that Anders had done this Ironman in Antarctica. And in part, that's kind of like what inspired me to say yes to swimming 10 miles. And so I was next in line, and I was like, okay, I'll tell them that story very quickly. And I did. And I think it might have just stuck in their heads. I'm not entirely sure. We probably had like 30 seconds worth of an interaction. But then in March, I get a message from Amar from Yes Theory. He's one of the founders and hosts of it. And he said, and this was a Wednesday, he said, "Are you doing anything on Friday?" I was like, no. Why do you ask? And he said, Yes Theory is filming an episode in Florida, and we would like to send you along with one of our videographers from Yes Theory to film this episode. And they didn't really tell me the details other than I would fly to Orlando. So 2 days later, I fly to Orlando and we record this episode. I go boxing for the first time ever. And the video is now on YouTube if you search Seek Discomfort on the Seek Discomfort channel. And anyway, I go on the epic adventure, and then I come back home, and then like 3 weeks later, they tell me that I was also selected to go on a bigger adventure with the big like Yes Theory channel. And they didn't tell me when or where or what we were doing or who we were doing it with. And so we kind of just like sat around waiting, and it was me and two other people. One of them is from Australia and the other one is from Canada. And myself, we were sort of selected as the three people to go on this trip. And so finally, one of the last weeks in May, I get an email, and Yes Theory says, "We would like you to come to Germany next week." And this was a Tuesday. And they wanted me in Germany the following Thursday. However, I had already planned a trip to New York and Montreal that week. So I would leave like that next day. And so I had to pack everything for an indefinite, unknown amount of time and unknown what we were doing or where we were going within like 3 hours. So I had 3 hours to pack for New York, Montreal, and wherever they were sending us in Europe. And so anyway, I go off to New York, Montreal, and then they fly us into Germany. And there we have this epic adventure with Yes Theory. And it was like a bunch of strangers who just became friends instantly. And I mean, I think you can speak to my obsession with Yes Theory, but this is so special because it's one of those things where I had it on my bucket list 2 years ago to one day do an adventure with Yes Theory, and then it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think maybe should we share the story, or would you rather of what happened, or would you rather just tell people I'll share it out, you'll share it out when it comes? What do you think?
I think it's coming out next week, so I think I can share a little bit about it.
Okay,
so sure. So hopefully it's out by now. But Yes Theory, what they do is their motto is seek discomfort, because the best things in life are whenever we step out of our comfort zone. And that's what you and I always talk about, right? It's like the biggest moments where we experience growth is whenever we feel a little bit of resistance towards something. So that gut feeling right before you hopped into the drum circle, or the feeling where right before you jump into really cold water, it's like those moments of discomfort. And what Yes Theory does is creates opportunities for, I guess, people to experience more of that discomfort. And so a lot of the videos that they do are travel related, or a lot of them are just like in the city that you live in. And so this particular episode, we didn't know what we were getting into. So all we knew was that 3 of us, like fans, got flown to Germany. And then in Germany, 2 of the hosts named Thomas and Stefan greeted us at the airport with a rental car. And we drove off to this middle of nowhere German town. We still didn't know what we were doing or where we were going. And then we pull off into the town, and we get out of the car, and they're like, okay, this is what we're doing. We are spending 4 days living with the Shaolin monks in like their temple. And you can Google Shaolin monks, but they're a group of, it's like martial arts, kung fu in China. And the only other like place in the world where they have a temple is in a random town in Germany in the forest. And we were about to go spend 4 days there. And I will let the video sort of reveal what goes on, but it's what's interesting is that it's about how do you find like that balance in your life, the yin and yang, and also the importance of the breath, the importance of the power of the mind and the body, and how whenever we experience challenges in our life and difficulties, it's almost like it's like training, right? Or like in running, when we're physically challenged and mentally challenged, that translates into helping other areas of our lives. And so that was the adventure was really this like very enlightening few days full of both meditation and also very, very physically intense martial arts things that we did that the video will reveal, because it's so intense that I don't think I could put words to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was about saying yes to these things. And I also want to add that life isn't just about saying yes, because when you say no, it also means saying yes to something else. I think a lot of people might hear the yes theory and be like, oh, it's just saying yes to everything.
Yes. Okay, so explain what you mean by that a little bit more.
Sure. So one example is when we were at this temple, all of us who were participating in the video, we had a great time. We met some absolutely incredible people and learned so much from them. And one night we were all so tired. It was the day that we did the very intense exercises, and we were all beat. And someone who was also staying at the temple, not with us though, came into a room and offered if we wanted to go to hang out and listen to music and just go out basically for a few hours. But it was already 9 or 10 p.m. and we were tired, and they're like, you guys are from Yes Theory, aren't you supposed to say yes to these things? And I just kind of looked around the room, and we were all so tired. And the phrase that came to mind was saying no means saying yes to something else. So we're going to pass on this opportunity to go listen to music and hang out with you guys, because we're going to say yes to rest, and it's okay. And so sometimes it's not about going at everything and saying yes to every single thing that comes your way. You do have to say no to some things. But I think the important thing is when you consciously and intentionally say no, you should be knowing what you're saying yes to. Mm-hmm. If you say no to going on a run, that probably means you're saying yes to rest or to traveling or to something else.
One last question that comes up from that is, you hear, and I've even said it, if it's not a hell yes, then it should be a no to things that you kind of have to do in life. How do you know the difference between that situation where it's for me, it's some stupid parenting thing that I quote have to do because that's what people do. So I say no because I'm nope, I'm actually not going to participate. That's not a yes for me. It's not a hell yes. So no, thank you. What's the difference between that and saying when that is provoking discomfort, and so is saying yes to things that, as you said, meet resistance? How do you know the difference there between things you kind of have to do and opportunities that come up?
I think that's the big question for all of us all the time is, and maybe it's a matter of just practicing feeling out your intuition. And there are things in life, we're all human, right? We all have to do things that we don't enjoy and that are challenging or that are frustrating or annoying. And I think that's just part of being human. But then I think the more we think about these things, the more we start to identify what is within our control and what is not within our control, right? And then the things that are within our control, maybe there's ways we can do it differently, or we have more flexibility. And then the things that we really can't control, like chores or whatever, we do have to do those. And I believe there are different tools and methods that help us whenever we have to do things that we don't want to do. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to identifying how much what is within your power to control, and then leaning into that. And then if it's something you can't control, then you just got to do it and move on, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right, Maria, people can definitely sign up to go get your newsletter. I'll put a link to that Yes Theory video if it's up. People can find your newsletter, which I absolutely love reading. Where else can people go find you?
Thank you. So I'm on Instagram most often at IA Vargas, and my newsletter is called It's Your World, and you can find that at itsyourworld.substack.com. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, for your friendship, and just for helping. I know how hard it is for those listening. I know I've been there. I was that person who was very controlled in every way and structured. But it really, many of you listening have commented on how joyful and carefree I seem now. And a lot of that is down to Maria. So thank you. And any parting words?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I love the topic of conversation. And I will say a lot of it is just practice and growth. And I think both of us lean on each other to encourage each other to do that. So for anyone listening, I would encourage you, as we said at the beginning, to find people who have this sort of mindset. I would say go watch Yes Theory and binge watch all of their episodes. And I think that's some of the biggest challenges in our life. We're going to face obstacles, and the more we do in our regular life to sort of practice for when they appear, that's the mindset that we begin to build up. And then the universe conspires in ways to helping you achieve what you really want to achieve. So
I just want to add one last thing in that if people do binge watch Yes Theory, for me, I love watching their videos, but there's always that part of me that's like, yeah, but I have kids. I can't just like say yes to something like the next day like that. But you can, we've given examples today of ways you can practice that, even if it's not these like saying yes to going to stay in a mansion with 16 people the next day because you have children at home or you have a mother that you have to take care of or something. But you can find ways to do it. You just have to leave the space, an open mind to do it. So thank you, Maria. I just love you so much. So yeah, appreciate you joining me.
Yay. Thank you. Love you back.
The Running for Real podcast and everything we do here at Running for Real would not be possible if it wasn't for the Running for Real team. While I am the person who you hear from most often and maybe the face of the brand, the rest of our team are such critical pieces of what we do. And without them, I think I'd just be running around in circles with ideas. So I want to take a moment to thank our team. To Jeremy Nessel, who's been with me since the very beginning. Kat McKay, Sally Pontarelli, Kelsey Wang, Sandy Gutierrez, Louise Murphy, Andrew Basola, Alexandria Will, and Maria Vargas. Thank you to each and every one of you for all that you give to Running for Real and our community. I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for having you as a part of the team. So appreciative of Maria for coming on the show. I really love that message, and I hope that resonates with you. And I encourage you, do something that we talked about today, be it talk to a barista, do the chocolates for the flight attendants, something. And please let us know if you do it, or at least let me know. I really would love to hear. And it feels good to do it. I want to remind you to go follow along with what Maria is up to. Also, you can check out hopefully the Yes Theory video, which will hopefully be up by the time you go check it out. You can go to runningforreal.com/episode 356. And then you can also find links in the show notes there for pre-ordering your copy of Becoming a Sustainable Runner, which I co-wrote with Zoe Rome, which comes out in a few months. Your pre-orders are the biggest thing you can do to support us. Pre-orders make a massive difference to where the book gets ranked on charts and everything. So that really helps us out. You can also find links to Tracksmith, who I talked about today, getting that code Tina Give and Tina New, depending on if you're a new customer or if you are a regular customer. And also to AG1, you can go to drinkag1.com/Tina. Also, there's links in the show notes for all of those things. Go to runningforreal.com/episode 356. I'll see you on Monday for Together Run, on Wednesday for a For Real episode, and then we will be back next Friday with a regular episode. I'll see you then.